Let me know if you can see my screen, okay, Alvin? You should be seeing the little prince. Can you see it right now? All right, so I'm hoping you can see it by now, okay, Alvin? Or if it's not loading, we'll give it like a couple more seconds. Okay. Okay, so it says on my end it's presenting. I just again want to check with you. You should be able to see it, right, Alvin? So on the screen we have an introduction to the Little Prince. Yeah, it'll be a 20-minute introduction. So your class has three other people. So there's Matthew, there's Dylan, there's Harry, and we did a quick ice-breaking activity just to get to know everybody. So Matthew's favorite So the question is, who's your favorite fictional character and why do you like them? Matthew's favorite is Winter from Wings of Fire. Your other classmate, Dylan, his favorite is Petey from Dogman. Harry's favorite is Rowley. What about yours, Alvin? Who's your favorite fictional character and why? Do you have a favorite TV show? So yours is Luffy from. Okay, I'll just write Tony. And do you know what TV show this is from? Or just from One Piece. I see Tony the pirate. Yes, I'm aware of this. So, and why is he your favorite? Because we'll explore these themes. Okay, so he's funny, and you think he's cute. Okay, so that's great. So these are some great things to know about your other classmates, and we'll get to know each other the next lesson as well. Okay, so on to the Little Prince, Alvin. So I have here two pictures. One is the actual book, and one is the author. So let's get a little bit of understanding of what the book is about. So here are some brief points about the book. So it's written by somebody named Antoine de Saint-Exupéry. He's a French writer and aviator. Do you know what the word aviator means, Alvin? Aviator. What does that mean? So, okay, think of air. What is, yes, so it has to do with airplane mechanics. So airplane or aircraft. Okay, aircraft. Okay, so anything that has to do with airplanes or aircraft, that's an aviator. Somebody who drives those. Great. So the book that we're going to be exploring was set in World War II, published in 1943. And the setting is the Sahara Desert. Okay. And we have multiple characters. There's a narrator. The narrator is somebody who explains the story, but we don't know much about the narrator. Then we have a pilot who crashes in the desert, the little prince. And what's not mentioned here is different characters. So the story unfolds as the narrator meets the little prince in the Sahara Desert. The little prince recounts his life story and the lessons he's learned traveling to various planets. So my question to you, Alvin, is like, have you already read a little bit about the little prince or know about the background of this book? Do you know anything else about it before we jump into it? Okay, so what do you know about the Little Prince, Alvin? Hmm. Yeah, okay, yeah. So he's not always he's not normal and this why do you say that, Alvin? Yeah. Why do you think that okay. The Little Prince. Okay, so you're saying that he's not normal, he's weird. So the Little Prince is what he's described as he's free from bias. He's free from bias. He's not normal, in the sense that he's not he's not been indoctrinated. How do I say it in a more simple way? He's not been educated enough to know about the world, to know about the world. And we'll explain what this means in the next slide. So he's very young. He doesn't have any bias yet. What does the word bias mean, Alvin? No, so bias means our personal assumptions that may or may not be true. For example, and we'll look into that. So an example might be this. So imagine seeing a person sitting on a bench. Okay, one assumption. Okay, by themselves. Imagine seeing a person sitting on a bench by themselves. Right. One assumption you could have is that the person is lonely. That's one assumption. Another assumption you could have is the person is just waiting for somebody. The person is waiting for someone else, right? Or they're just relaxing on the bench. Another assumption, they're just relaxing on the bench. What would you think, Alvin? So if you see just a person sitting on a bench by themselves, what would you think? So I just was wondering, Alvin. So if you saw a person sitting on the bench by themselves, what would you think of them? Okay, sure. Uh, is this better for him? I'll make it slideshow mode. What about this, Alvin? One second. Okay, so is this better? Okay, so yeah, let's continue. Good. So the example, right? If you see a person sitting on a bench by themselves, you might have assumptions, biases, right? One bias might be they're lonely, another might be they're waiting for somebody. What would you think of them, Alvin, if you saw somebody sitting by themselves? Maybe they're sad. So that's a bias, right? So everybody has their own bias about the world. But the little prince, he doesn't have any bias because he's so young. He's still a kid. So he sees the world without the bias of other people. Okay, so let's keep going. So could you read this for me, Alvin? Okay, great. So I'll pause here. I'm going to ask you some content questions. So it says here that Saint Exupéry was a commercial pilot. How do you think, Alvin, how do you think that background shaped his writing of The Little Prince? So he's a pilot, he traveled everywhere, or he traveled to many places. How do you think that affects his writing? Yeah, so the Little Prince is also traveling, right? So you'll when we read the book, you'll notice that the Little Prince is traveling to different planets, similar to how Antoine, the author, he traveled to different countries for his job. Okay, let's keep going then. So let me go and talk about the key points. Okay, so the key points for the historical context. The book takes place during World War II. Do you know anything about World War II, Alvin? Okay, so you'll probably study it eventually in school, but World War II was a big war. It's a big conflict between countries in the 1940s. So, you know, Germany, Germany, America, France were part of one side, and then, oh no, not sorry. So Germany, Italy was part of one side, and then America, Britain, France were part of a different side. So they had a fight. They were fighting each other. And there were certain events like the Holocaust. This was when like certain ethnicities like Jewish people uh, were put in internment camps. There was Pearl Harbor, bombing of Pearl Harbor. This is America, and something called the invasion of Poland. So the general theme is this: uh, during the World War II, there were a lot of sad events. Like I said, there was a lot of fighting between countries. There was also a lot of um, violence, right? So this led to the book's themes of loneliness, friendship, love, and loss because it was taking place during a period that was very volatile, it was tumultuous, it was emotionally charged. Okay, another theme that we want to explore is exile and loss. So I'll read this part, okay, Alvin? So remember how Antoine, the author, he was traveling a lot as a pilot. He was also feeling lonely at many parts of his journey. So being in exile, what does exile mean, Alvin? Exile. So to be outcasted. So it doesn't mean you're killed, but it means like you're no longer in a place that you belong. So an example is like if you live in France your whole life and you get exiled to a different country, right? So that you are outcasted. So being outcasted, being in exile, gave Antoine, the author, a vantage point of detached observation, much like the little prince traveling from planet to planet. The sense of exile and distance from his homeland might have influenced themes of loneliness and the importance of human connection. Okay, so I'll explain why he was in exile. So Antoine, the author, was an aviator. He was flying pilots, and his experience as a pilot heavily influenced his writings. The opening scenario where the narrator in The Little Prince crashes in the Sahara Desert mirrors Antoine's own life. He survived a plane crash in the Libyan desert in 1935. So The Little Prince is sort of based on Antoine's life. The Little Prince travels a lot like Antoine, and the Little Prince is also experiences a crash. Well, the narrator crashes, similar to how Antoine experiences a crash during his own trips. Okay, so let's go through another one. So, other things we should be aware of when we're going to talk about this book are the philosophical undercurrents. Do you know what the word existentialism means, Alvin? Okay, so existentialism is a big term to talk about the nature of our existence. So, have you ever asked questions to yourself like, what's the purpose of life, right? What's the meaning of life? Is it to go to school and get a job and make money? Is it to have a family? What are some other questions you might have about life, Alvin? So, a big one is why do we exist? What's the purpose of living? Yes, another question. Why is there even life on Earth? So These are existential questions dealing with life, right? And the book is going to touch upon, it's going to explore themes like searching for a meaning. Okay, so similar to how we as humans might search for a meaning to our own lives, the little prince is going to be searching for meaning during his travels around the universe. So he's going to go from planet to planet and he's going to ask questions about life, okay? The other parts of the book that we should like look at is colonialism. Do you know what the word colonialism means, Alvin? What's colonialism? Okay. Okay. So back to the slides. So I asked, what do you think the word colonialism means, Alvin? So okay, so we'll do this. So colonialism, it's a word that means putting in control a group. So in Canada, in Canadian history, maybe English Canadians, they colonized French Canadians. Or here in Canada, other things are like people say that Indigenous people, the First Nations, were colonized. They were put in control by like a different group. So, how does this relate to the Little Prince? Well, the Little Prince is going to be encountering various characters called the kings, and this is some kind of example of colonialism. Okay, because it seems like the Little Prince is going, the kings in these planets, they're colonizing certain people. So it's a little jab, it's a subtle critique. It's kind of making fun of colonialism. Okay, so let's try reading a little bit of The Little Prince. Okay, Alvin, I'm gonna go stop sharing my screen. I'm gonna share a different part of my screen. 1 second. Let me share the book now. Can you see it, Alvin? Okay, 1 second. Let's wait for it to load. Can you see it now? Okay, perfect. So let's read a little bit of The Little Prince. So you read one paragraph and I'll read the next one, okay, Alvin? Can you read just this paragraph? Good. So primeval forest means like very ancient, a very old forest, okay? I'll read the second paragraph. In the book, it said boa constrictors swallow their prey whole without chewing it. After that, they are not able to move and they sleep through the 6 months that they need for digestion. Can you read the next one, Alvin? Good. So I'm going to pause here. I won't show you the next paragraph, but this is where told you. Remember how we talked about biases, people's assumptions? What does this drawing look like to you, Alvin? What does this look like to you? Good. So you're saying it's a boa constrictor swallowing something or an elephant. So let's keep reading. I'll read the next couple lines, okay? So I showed my masterpieces the grown-ups and asked them whether the drawing frightened them, but they answer, frightened? Why should anyone be frightened by a hat? Okay, so remember how I talked about biases, Alvin, in the book? So you thought this was a boa constrictor or an elephant, But the grown-ups, what did they think it was? A hat, exactly. So again, remember the example I said, if you see a person on a bench, what do you assume? Some people think they're sad, they're lonely. Other people might think they're just waiting for somebody, right? Here, the grown-ups think it's the hat, whereas you think it's a boa constrictor, and I personally just thought it was a hill. I thought this was a hill. So we have different biases. The Little Prince doesn't. Okay, so I'm gonna keep reading. So it says, my drawing was not a picture of a hat. It was a picture of a boa constrictor digesting an elephant, like you said. But since the grown-ups were not able to understand it, I made another drawing. I drew the inside of a boa constrictor so that the grown-ups could see it clearly. They always need to have things explained. My drawing number two looked like this. So this was the boa constrictor, right? Swallowing the elephant. So you got that right. So my last question for you before we wrap up is, do you agree with the statement that grown-ups always need to have things explained to them? Do you agree with that statement, Alvin? And why? Why do you think grown-ups always? Okay, why? Why do you think they have to always? Okay, from your observations, why do you think grown-ups in general? Why do you think they need to be explained things? Why can't they just tell us this is a book? Hmm. Okay, so yeah, so maybe grown-ups have a different view about what the future would be like. So they need some explanations of what new things are happening in the world. All right, so good work, Alvin. So I'm gonna give you some homework, okay? So I'll put it in the chat because I want you to have a copy of it. So one second. So let me know if you get this in the chat. I'm gonna stop sharing my screen. But you have homework for this week. It's just to read chapters 1 to 7 and do a short writing piece on one of the characters. So let me know if you get my message in the chat, Alvin. I'm trying to figure out how to use it. Okay, it's in the chat now. Can you see it, Alvin? Okay, so it should be in the chat. I'm gonna wait for you to say that you've copied it so we know for sure before I let you go. Perfect. Okay, so I'll see you this coming Thursday. So make sure to work on your homework, okay, Alvin? Okay, well, take care. Bye bye now.